Hello students, today we are going to be talking about kitchen utensils. Now most of you, if you've taken Miss Garrett's class or one of my classes, you have probably already seen and heard of these utensils. If that is the case, just go ahead and start labeling your utensils. And you do not necessarily have to watch this video. However, if you were in my Introduction to Human Studies when we got shut down last spring, please make sure that you watch this video. Or if you have never taken one of mine or Miss Garrett's classes that involved cooking, please make sure to pay attention and watch this video, as there will be lots of important information that I will go over today. So if you will, go ahead and find your kitchen utensils and tools paper. I will have a hard copy of this if you want to print out the kitchen tools and utensils. If you have this somewhere in your notes from a long time ago from another class, you may go ahead and reuse it. But if not, you're going to need to take some notes and make sure that we can go over these kitchen tools and utensils because they are very important. I'm going to keep the view open on my screen so you can see me. So as we go through, I will kind of hold up and show you some of the tools that we will be using in class. Okay, so let's begin talking about kitchen utensils, and more specifically utensils that we're going to be using regarding cooking utensils. The first one of these is going to be a wooden spoon. Okay, now these are common in your kitchens, okay, and they are going to be used for stirring any type of foods during cooking or mixing. Wooden spoons are a good basic thing to have in your kitchen. They are also, you can find spoons just like this made of plastic, which are a little bit more durable and dishwasher safe. So some things to remember for wooden spoons, okay? You never want to soak any type of utensil with wood for long periods of time, because that's going to cause it to crack and break apart. And you never want to put anything that is wooden inside of the dishwasher. Okay. Long exposure in water will cause wood to swell and then dry out, and basically it will weaken the utensil over time so that it will eventually break. So make sure with wooden spoons you can use them for cooking and mixing anything in the kitchen. But remember, you want to make sure that you do not submerge it or soak it in water. You would just take a dishcloth or dish rag with warm soapy water, wipe it off, pat it dry, and then let it air dry before you put it up completely. Okay, so that is a wooden spoon. Now let's talk about something called a slotted spoon. Okay, now a slotted spoon, if you look here, has all of these small holes in it. And the purpose of a slotted spoon is for you to be able to lift foods from liquid. So let's say, for example, maybe you have some green beans on the stove, okay? And you don't want to get green bean juice all over your plate. So you could use a slotted spoon to scoop it out, okay? And then the liquid would fall and the food would remain. So a slotted spoon is used to lift food from liquids. All right, number 3 is a small cooking spoon. Okay, they can be large or small. Okay, and a lot of times this will typically look like a regular spoon that you would eat cereal with. This is just that bigger one that's not cool, that's a little bit too big for your mouth. Okay, you can use it to spoon liquids over food, or even use it to remove liquid. So let's say you have something that you wanted to remove a little bit of liquid. You would just skim the top, press down, the liquid would fill in, and then you could remove it from the pot or pan or dish. Okay. It is also used to spoon flour into a measuring cup. okay? And we'll talk about that a little bit later when we get into our measuring lesson. But this right here is a small cooking spoon. It's a lot larger than a regular spoon that you would use to eat your cereal. Okay, number 4, we have something called a 2-tine fork. Some of my students want to try to call this a trident, but it is not in fact a trident, okay? It is actually a 2-tine fork, referring to the tines of a fork, and there are 2 of them, okay? It is to hold cooked meats while cutting. So let's say, for example, if you are going to carve up a turkey on Thanksgiving, you're going to put the 2 tines in the meat, okay? And then you would cut your meat, okay? Now, you never want to use this when grilling, okay? Because if you are piercing holes in the meat, it's going to cause your meat to dry out quicker. So really a 2-tine fork should only be used to hold cooked meats, not when grilling to turn meats. Okay, next we have a ladle. Okay, now when you look at a ladle, you're going to notice a kind of a bowl shape on the bottom. Okay, the purpose of a ladle is to lift soups, gravies, and other foods and liquids out. We most likely think of a ladle when serving soup, okay? Nobody, like if you're serving chili or soup, you want to get the juice of that as well, not just the vegetables or the meat, or you want that juice to go as well. So this is the opportune time to use a ladle when serving soups and gravies. All right, number 6 are called tongs, okay? Tongs are used for turning meats during cooking. So again, tongs would be used on the grill for turning meats, okay? You also would use them to lift anything that is kind of solid out of boiling water. Now, you never, ever, ever want to stick your fingers down in a pot to get like a hot dog out or a corn on the cob out, because you're going to burn your fingers. Use tongs. That's what they're for. So tongs are used for you to lift things out from hot liquids. Okay, so those are tongs. Next, we have a turner. Okay, now a lot of you may think that this is a spatula. Spatulas can actually mean different things. Now, at home, if that's what you're used to calling it, that's fine. But in class, we're going to make sure that we call it a turner, because that's actually what it does, okay? It has a flat bottom, okay? And that enables you to turn things such as pancakes over, or if you have meats to turn over. Sometimes turners will have slots in them. This one doesn't. But sometimes they can have slots in them that can help grease to flow down so that it doesn't end up on your plate. Okay, but this is a turner, and it can either be solid like you see here, or it can have slots in it like a slotted spoon. Okay, then we have a rotary beater. Now, most of you, when you look at this, some of you probably have never seen this. But if you go to your grandmother's kitchen, maybe, you might see this. Because before there was electric mixers, the rotary beater was common to use. So what you would do is you would hold it, and then you would be able to turn this, and it would be able to whip eggs or egg whites. Okay, and you can see it can go pretty fast. Okay, but that is an example of a rotary beater. You could also use a hand mixer or an electric mixer for certain things. But this is a rotary beater. Next, we have something called a wire whisk or whip. Okay, the wire whisk is used to whip eggs and blend sauces and gravies. Okay, you can also use it to incorporate your dry ingredients such as flour, baking soda, and that sort of thing. And all you do is it's a motion that you use with a small circle. Okay, so that is a wire whisk or whip. Okay, so now we're going to move on to cutting tools, specifically all of the different knives you will find in a kitchen. Now, it is super important to remember kitchen safety because sharp knives will cut you, okay? And dull ones too, which we're going to talk about when we get to kitchen safety. But there are a couple knives that we need to know about that are in most kitchens. Okay, first we have the chef's knives, and y'all, I feel like kind of like a serial killer right now. But anyway, this is a chef's knife, and yes, it is a large knife, okay? But it is a chef's knife. It has a nice wide blade, okay? And the way that you grip it is very important, okay? So I'm going to show you how to do that once we get into our chopping lesson. But you will need to hold the knife like this, and it gives you, and it's great on a cutting board, okay, because it is able to help you cut up all those fruits and vegetables. This is the knife that chefs most often use. That's why it's called a chef's knife. Now, chef's knives can also look like this. Again, it's a very long blade. It's very thick, okay, as you can see. And sometimes they are very heavy and thick for chopping. Okay, so that is a chef's knife. Then we have a butcher knife. A butcher knife, okay, is going to be used to cut raw meats. If you look really closely, you can see how this blade is curved upward. That really helps when you are inserting the meat, okay, when you are inserting the knife into the meat to get down and break down all of that tissue and then be able to go down and slice. So a butcher knife is used to cut raw meats. Okay, then we have something called a paring knife. Now, a paring knife is that small knife that's in your kitchen, and you might have more than one. As you can see it in my hand, okay, it's very small compared to the chef's knife, okay? And this is going to allow you to core, which is take out the center of an apple, to peel any vegetables, or to cut up maybe an apple. Okay, so that is a paring knife. It's that small knife. All right, then we have a bread knife. Now, a bread knife is typically a pretty long knife, okay? However, it has something that is essential, and that is called a serrated edge. Does everybody kind of see how that forms little triangles or peaks? That is a serrated edge, and that is a jagged or textured edge. And what that does is it allows you to cut bread without smashing it all of the way down. If you ever are at Longhorn or a place where they serve bread, they're going to bring you a serrated knife, because if you've ever tried to cut bread without a serrated knife, it just becomes a mushed up together piece of bread. So a serrated knife will allow you to slice bread so that it doesn't get smushed all the way down. Okay, then we have a meat slicer or carving knife. Now, this is a sharp knife, okay, and it is used to to slice meats that have already been cooked. So for Thanksgiving, when you're carving a turkey, you're going to use your two-tine fork, which we talked about earlier, to hold the meat, and then you would use your meat slicer to then cut your pieces. Okay, it is extremely important for every kitchen to have kitchen shears. Now, kitchen shears are much thicker than regular scissors, okay? They're usually a lot heavier too. They typically have this right here, which is kind of a built-in bottle opener, okay? But they are very, very strong. Kitchen shears can actually be used to cut up fruits and vegetables, but you can also use these for many different purposes, okay? Opening any type of food packaging. You can also actually, they are strong enough to cut through a chicken, okay? So if you have a whole roasted chicken and you wanted to cut it open, you could actually cut the chicken using kitchen shears. So kitchen shears are extremely strong and extremely sharp, but a must-have in any type of kitchen. Okay, next we have a vegetable peeler or simply a peeler. Okay, now this is a standard peeler, but they may look a little differently. They might be something called a Y-shaped peeler, which is basically where the blade is going horizontally instead of vertically. But what you would do is you would hold the peeler, okay, and basically you would make sure that you peeled like potatoes away from you, but they are used to pare potatoes, carrots, and apples, okay? So that is a peeler. Okay, then you have cutting boards. Cutting boards can come in lots of different materials, okay? So for this one, I have a wood cutting board that's a wood block, okay? And the purpose of a cutting board is to protect your cabinet top or the table during cutting, okay? So it's very important. It helps keep your knives nice and sharp, but it also protects your countertop, which is super important. Now, you want to make sure that you clean these with bleach and water after cutting raw meats, because remember, you want to avoid foodborne illness, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later on. So you can have a cutting board that's made of wood, like this one. You can also have a flimsier cutting board, okay, that's made of this plastic type material. And it is also, it's going to protect your countertop, and it's also going to be very, very easy to clean up. And then you also have, if you're working with something that might have a lot of juice in it, you have cutting boards that can have a little groove. I don't know if you can see that right there, but cutting board that has a groove in it, okay? And that will simply allow you to kind of catch some of the juice or something from getting all over your counter. So this is another good option, and it has rubberized edges so that it will prevent things from slipping on your cutting board as well. So again, cutting boards can come in different materials depending on their use. All right, then we have a potato masher. Now, a potato masher has a very specific use because it is used to, guess what? Mash up potatoes. So, when you've boiled potatoes and you've made mashed potatoes and you're ready to mash it up, all you do is drain the water, and then you just start taking out all your aggression on those potatoes, okay? And that's what you do, and then you're left with no lump mashed potatoes. Whew, the sunlight has a little halo going on up there, doesn't it? All right, so that is a potato masher. All right, then we have a box grater. Now, most of you think, oh, that's for cheese. Yes, but depending on the type of cheese you are using, you can actually do different things with a box grater. So it's going to shred and grate things and slices, typically for cheese, but sometimes you can use carrots or something else that you are trying to grate. Now, if you look on the side here, this side actually will help you achieve slices for block cheese. Then you have a small, almost like a star pattern, if you wanted to do something like Parmesan or a harder type of cheese. Then for softer cheeses like cheddar, you're going to use these big grates. And then if you have like any other type of something that you wanted to very finely grate, you would use this small side as well. So again, a grater can have lots of different options for cutting and grating things. Okay, next up we have something called a strainer or a sieve. Okay, and it is used to drain small amounts, okay, or sift flour. Now, so when you are making something like, let's say you have some ground beef or something that you that might fall through a colander, you would use a sieve to kind of drain the grease out of something so that you could drain off the fat. It can also be used to sift or incorporate flour. Okay. Then you have a colander. Okay, a colander is going to be used to drain and rinse off fruits, vegetables, and even pasta. Okay, typically a good colander is going to have two handles or one long handle on the side. Okay, and you'll notice that a colander has these holes inside. Okay, and those holes are going to serve a specific purpose, and they are going to drain water away from your food to help you clean and rinse. So this is a colander and has lots and lots of uses. All right, then we have something called a flour sifter. Now, some of us probably are not familiar with this, okay? But flour sifters can look like this, and they have a little mechanism which you pull, and then it makes the inside, whoops, had something in there, and has the inside where it will add air to your flour. And to aerate means to put air into it. So it's going to make flour fluffier. Okay, and that is the purpose of a sifter. Now, if you don't have one of these, okay, you can always spoon flour into a sieve, and then you would just slightly do this and make it snow, okay, and then you would sift and aerate your flour that way as well. Okay, then we have measuring spoons. Measuring spoons typically come nested in a set, okay? So think teaspoon, tablespoon, things like that, okay? And they are going to measure small amounts of both dry and liquid ingredients. So think teaspoon, tablespoon. All of those are going to be used for measuring spoons. Okay, and you can use those for dry ingredients such as flour, baking soda, baking powder, but you can also use them for liquids such as oils, vanilla extract, things like that in baking. So these are measuring spoons, and no kitchen should be without them. Then you have a liquid measuring cup. Now, a liquid measuring cup is just for measuring liquids. They typically come in different sizes, but this right here is an example of a 1 cup liquid measuring cup. And you will know that it also has the cups, the ounces as well. So if a recipe calls for a half a cup of milk, you would simply use a liquid measuring cup to measure that. Liquid measuring cups are used for liquid ingredients only. So think things like milk, oil, anything that is pourable. Now, if it's something that you have to spoon or scoop, you're not going to use a liquid measuring cup. You're in fact going to use a dry measuring cup. Dry measuring cups are for dry ingredients only. So think flour, brown sugar, molasses, peanut butter. All of these things are going to be dry ingredients, okay? And you're going to use the dry measuring cups for that purpose. If we tried to measure flour in a liquid measuring cup, odds are the cake or whatever you're baking is going to turn out very, very dry because there is a small amount of difference. In cooking, we don't tend to notice it as much, but in baking, knowing the difference between these two things, dry ingredient measuring cups and a wet ingredient or liquid measuring, are super, super important in the culinary world as well as in the baking world. Okay, so make sure you know how to use both those properly. Okay, then we have something called a straight edge spatula. Now remember when we talked about the turner or the rubber scraper, and I didn't want you to use the word spatula. This is why. Because in the culinary and baking world, this is a spatula. The spatula is known as a straight edge. It's not sharp because I can run my fingers along. There's no sharp edges, okay? But a straight edge spatula is used to level off dry ingredients. It's also used to lift other items, to lift foods and cookies from pans. So a straight edge spatula is also used to ice cakes, which is very important. So a straight edge spatula has specific uses, and that's why in the kitchen we don't want to call just anything a spatula. So that is a straight edge spatula. Okay, then we have something called a pastry blender. Now, this might not be in your home, okay, but I bet you could probably find it in a grandparent's or a great-grandparent's kitchen, okay? This is a pastry blender. A pastry blender is used to cut shortening or butter into dry ingredients, because when you're mixing any type of fat inside of a flour, it is going to be difficult to get it incorporated well, and that's why you need a pastry blender. Now, if you don't have a pastry blender, you can also use 2 forks to kind of serve the same purpose. However, this gives you so much more surface area. All right, and then we have a pastry brush. Now, this is a silicone pastry brush. I really like the silicone because it's super, super easy to clean, and I can stick it in the dishwasher, okay? But other pastry brush might be made with a wire handle and have bristles, like almost look like a paintbrush in the kitchen, okay? And it is used to brush any type of melted oil or butter or shortening on top of foods. When I make my biscuits, I like to melt some butter and then dip the melted butter, and take the melted butter and dip my pastry brush inside, and then I like to put it over my biscuits so that I have that good buttery goodness on my biscuits, okay? It can also be used to put sauce over food, such as barbecue sauce over chicken or any type of meat. So that is a pastry brush. Again, as far as pastry, you can use this for making all types of glazes and things on pastries.